Jose Angel, I love this kid. He's 18. Well, he just turned 19 actually. When we first found him, we found a group of teenagers. I think the youngest was like 16, and then Jose was about like 18 at the time, and there was 4 of them. And we started teaching them, and they were the biggest punks. Like, they would sit there, and there would be like 2 of them that would really be into the lesson, that would really listen to us, and we felt like they were actually getting something out of it. But Jose, he was just a punk, and he would sit there and would crack jokes and just make fun the entire time. And so my companions and I thought that, he's really, like, he's not ready for this. He's not ready to receive this gospel and to accept it. And we had a lesson, and in that lesson we were planning on straight up telling like Jose and this other young man that like if they didn't want this, like that's fine, but they needed to be straight up with us so we could focus on the other 2 boys that really did want this. And so we were going into lesson with that mindset of like, we're going to lay down the law and we're going to let them know if they don't want this, like, okay. But in that lesson we taught the Book of Mormon, and that was one of the most spiritual lessons I've ever had. We sat there and told them about the Book of Mormon, what it was. And we had each of them, we read the first chapter, First Nephi, and went through and explained it and applied it to them in their lives. And it was in that lesson that the Spirit touched each of their hearts, but specifically Jose, in a very powerful way. And at the first page of the Book of Mormon, we had some of the youth in the ward write their testimonies. And Jose, at the end of the lesson, went and read that testimony that was in there. And he started crying. And he just kept asking us, like, I don't know what this is and I'm feeling. I don't get it. I don't understand. And so we explained to him how, what the Spirit was and how it testifies of truth. And watching that young man feel the Spirit and see how it touched him was incredible. And after that, we spent months teaching those boys. But with time, the other 3 kind of faded off. They really, they chose not to accept the gospel at that point in their lives. But Jose, because he had been touched so strongly by the Spirit, decided to continue with it, regardless of his friends and even some of the obstacles that they put up for him. And we had gotten a baptismal date for Jose, and he was progressing really well. Jose grew up in foster care, didn't really have a family growing up, and so he didn't have a whole lot of support through that time when we were teaching him, except for the bad influences that he had. And so there came a point about a week before his baptism that he just dropped off the face of the earth. Like, we couldn't contact him. He was never home, nothing. And we knew that it was because of the influences that were around him and that they had a negative effect on him. And so my companions and I did a lot of praying, and we eventually were able to get in contact with him. Actually, he contacted us, and I'll never forget that phone call. He called and just said, like, I'm done. This is it. I don't want any more of this. I'm done with y'all and with the church, and just I can't do this. And so we did a lot of praying, and we went to go sit down and have a lesson with him. And when we went, he allowed us to come over one more time. But when we got there, he wouldn't even let us in the front door. Like, he was just he was done with it. And that was it. He just completely was gone. He wouldn't let us come over and see him. He didn't want anything to do with us. But then 2 weeks later, and this was still after, like, I had been praying so hard and fasting, and 2 weeks later, he just shows up at church. And he showed up in church for the first time in a white shirt and a tie. Came back and said that he was sorry and that he wanted to learn about this gospel because it had had such a powerful and positive effect in his life. So we started teaching him again, and it, like, something had just switched, something had changed. He had received that strength that he needed from reading the Book of Mormon. That's what he said, that those 2 weeks that we hadn't had any communication with him, he was still reading the Book of Mormon, and that's what had given him the strength to come back to church that Sunday. And watching Jose Angel be baptized was one of the best experiences that I've ever had. Seeing him come out of the water and the smile on his face was incredible. And he got out of the water and he was just like, he's like, dude, he's like, I just feel like so light. He's like, I just feel like this weight's just been gone. He's like, I just like want to go jump off the roof and go fly. He's like, I feel like I can do that right now. And he was just ecstatic. And that was towards the end of my mission. I think I had a transfer left after that. But since then, I've kept in contact with him almost weekly. And he got his patriarchal blessing, which has been a huge strength to him, to see what it is that God has in store for him and how special he really is to our Heavenly Father. He received the priesthood, which has also been a great strength to him. And I actually just talked to Jose this week, and he put in his mission papers. And so he's going to go serve a mission for the Lord now. And he's going to be the first one in his family to go and do that. And he's going to, he's like, I'm a pioneer, dude. He's like, I'm starting this fresh, you know. He's like, I'm setting the example for my future children. And watching him and his progress in the gospel has been the biggest testimony builder for me personally. Just to see how the Book of Mormon can affect and change someone's life, but how the atonement of Jesus Christ, when applied in our lives, really does change everything. To see a young man who was mixed up in some pretty bad stuff to now being prepared to go serve a mission is incredible, because that all has to do with the atonement of Jesus Christ.